All right, everyone. Welcome to On the Record with OPD. Today we have Oakland Police Officer, or should I say Trust Building Officer, Kim Armstead. Kim, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. So let's get right into it. Trust Building Officer. Before that, how did you come to the department?
Well, I grew up in Berkeley, went to Berkeley High, attended Cal, played soccer for the university, and while I was in college, my sophomore year, I took a Citizens Police Academy with the Berkeley Police Department. It was at that point I knew for sure that I wanted to be a police officer and get into law enforcement. Although I didn't do it right away, I ended up, after graduating college, moved to Oakland, where I lived for nearly 20 years, and worked for the Alameda County Department of Child Support Services. I was a legal caseworker there and spent about 10 years in that profession. I figured then was the time to really follow my passion and dream, and ended up applying with OPD.
And what was that process? How long have you been in the department?
5 years now.
5 years now.
5 years.
So what was your previous assignment before you became a Trust Building Officer?
Prior to this position, I actually worked out in East Oakland. All my assignments have been out east. So after field training, I was a patrol officer, beat 30, swing shift B-side. And then I worked for the LATAC unit, which now is referred to as 911 surge units. And then from there became a community resource officer for both beat 29 and 30.
So if I'm counting correctly, this is your fourth assignment in 5 years?
Correct.
Moving through the ranks. So I remember back in February when the chief took over as the chief, then deputy chief became the chief. He decided that there was some immediate attention needed in different parts of Oakland. I know he put a liaison for the community in Chinatown and Fruitvale, and then you became the Trust Building Officer, overall liaison. How's that been going for you?
So far, so good. I really enjoy the assignment. I think my prior position as a community resource officer has really just naturally, I've really naturally transitioned into this new role seamlessly. It's really an extension of the work I was doing out in East Oakland as a community resource officer, just on a broader scale, citywide. So I feel as though I am an advocate or voice for community members, as well as our officers internally, directly to the chief. Having the chief's ear and that of the executive team is instrumental in sustaining and building trust.
How is that important, though? You said, you have the direct ear, you're the direct line from the community, but as well as from the internal officers, right?
Yes.
How has that been working out for you?
It's been good. I feel as though I actually have the trust of not only community members, but officers internally. I've had many conversations about what's working, what's not working, different concerns, thoughts. So I think it's definitely an instrumental position to have. I don't take it lightly, and I consider my role, important and necessary. And
has it been a tough transition? Has it been going from the CRO or community resource officer to the Trust Building Officer?
No, oddly enough, it's like I mentioned before, seamless. I do miss being out on the streets, and of course with my partner, Officer Lopez, who is a huge advocate for community members, especially in the East Oakland area. Together we did a lot of projects, stemming from backpack giveaways to Easter basket giveaways, reading with a cop, the list goes on and on. So that aspect I miss. But this actually, I think, impacts people on a broader scale.
But you have not gone too far from there. I know there was a backpack giveaway earlier this week that you worked in part with that with Parker Elementary School. So you're kind of still rooted in that, correct?
Absolutely. And this is the part of the job I really enjoy and love. It's all fascinating to me, but I really enjoy community involvement, getting out and speaking with community members, and really, having that engagement.
Speaking with the community, I know the chief had tasked you with some of the things of working with me when it dealt with going out, talking to the community, the march, the rally. Go into that?
Yeah, Stand Up for a Safe Oakland was a rally march, as you alluded to, that the chief held last month. It was a phenomenal event, just really a way for the community to gather alongside the police department to say enough is enough, to try to put an end to violence and rally the support, come together and work as a whole, to really put down the guns and put an end to the violence.
Is that important?
Absolutely, because no one group can do it alone. Consistent with the chief's message, it's going to take not only our department, but also violence prevention, violence interrupters, as well as the community, who shares a large role of responsibility to putting an end to some of this crime.
And the chief did not end with the Stand Up for Safe Oakland March rally. He's continued on, correct?
Correct. So he's also doing conversations towards solutions, where he goes into different areas or neighborhoods on a weekly basis and meets with community members and discusses issues and concerns that are directly impacting their area. So I think this is also brilliant. The chief is really on the ground, touching base with those who are affected, the most.
How has that worked? I'm sure you've sat in on a few of them. How's that been going to have the direct access to the chief? Most people don't have that direct access.
No, and that's why this is really phenomenal, because I think people overall are shocked, that they're getting this opportunity to meet with the chief directly and then ask, some of these questions that they may not normally have the opportunity to ask. So I think it's great.
And it's also, is it about more of not really pointing fingers kind of situation, more literally just talking about, like you said, conversations towards the solutions?
Absolutely. So really, community members are attending and providing, information, giving feedback, again, what the biggest issues in their communities are, the problems that they're facing. And they can range from violent issues such as shootings, all the way down to abandoned vehicles. But the idea is for, the Oakland Police Department, the chief, to hear these messages and then be able to work together with the community towards a solution.
Now, I know the trust building officer is a fairly new, in a sense, I'm sure, or retransformed. What do you see as your role? How do you see it going forward?
First off, I think all officers are trust building officers. We all share the same responsibility to build and sustain relationships, trustworthy relationships with our community members. Now, depending on one's assignment, may be dependent on how much actual engagement that particular officer may have or be able to have with a community member. For example, patrol officers, they're tasked with answering calls for service. And we know that in Oakland there's a high volume, so they're oftentimes going call to call to call, whereas a community resource officer may have more time or be better equipped to, have deeper conversations and delve into deeper solutions for problems they may be facing. I feel as though I'm a voice, again, for community members as well as our officers internally to, relay information and concerns directly to the chief and his team.
Now, this isn't the first time we've had conversation, because I know we had you speaking for the Women's History Month. And is that something that women power, that kind of girl power, or however people want to say it? I don't want to offend anyone, but what's your thoughts with that, especially in a male-dominated field that you're currently in?
Yeah, no, slowly but surely, women are stepping up to the plate. I only applied at OPD, and there were several reasons why, but one of which was that it's a progressive and a forward-thinking department. So it's been a pleasure working here, and I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. And a lot of that is because of all of my coworkers, the men and women that I work beside on a regular daily basis.
And the trust building, if someone in the community wants to talk to you, is it that you have that conversation and then do you forward it to the chief, or how does that work out?
Yeah, predominantly, I hear what the concerns are, the issues, and it can be positive feedback too. And then have that conversation and then address it in one way or another, with the chief or the appropriate member from his team.
So I have a question here, and I want to make sure you can take it back to the chief. One person said, trying to stop the crime, people's cars are being robbed, guns by people breaking cars and shooting. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to read it. Cars are shooting. Are you setting up these guys to catch them? I know the chief talks to you about those kind of things and let you know. So this is a concern from a resident that you're going to take back to the chief as well, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's no secret. We know that violence in this city has skyrocketed, and it's unacceptable. So every day, our officers are working hard day in and day out to come to resolutions, and we are making good arrests and recovering more than 100 guns per month for the last, I think, 7+ months off the streets. So good work is being done on a daily and regular basis. But unfortunately, we still are faced with the spike in crime and violence. But absolutely, I will take that back to the chief.
Yeah, and like you said, spike in violence, not just here in the Bay Area, not just here in Oakland, but nationwide in that kind of situation.
Yeah, it's not just here.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What was it like, the call from the chief saying, "Hey, I want you to be my trust building officer"? How did that go about?
Honestly, I was a little taken back. I wasn't sure what this position would look like, and I think it's still, in the works and kind of room to make it my own to some degree. But it was exciting nonetheless, to have the opportunity to work, in the chief's office amongst some of our best leaders in the department is an awesome nod.
And you've worked with the chief before, because when he was deputy chief, he was over your area in Deep East Oakland, correct?
Correct, yeah. When I was out in East Oakland, I worked for Area 5, and he was, yes, the deputy chief out there. So.
And I remember seeing a video of the chief actually when he walked his first walk in Deep East Oakland as the chief. You guys were out there, you and I think Officer Lopez, correct?
Correct, yeah, along the International Corridor. So, yeah, working with him is not unfamiliar. I've enjoyed doing it, and he's a lot of the reason why I decided to take on this position.
Got it. So as the trust building officer, like I said, we talked a little bit about how you see your role. How would you like the community to see you? How would you like the community to see as your role?
Well, again, I just hope that, people feel as though I'm approachable. I try to be transparent, respectful with every contact I make. And I think that goes the same for every officer within this department. I don't think, the sole responsibility of one officer, tasked with being a trust building officer and that being all they do is, it can't fall just on the shoulders of one officer, if you will. So it's incumbent upon all of us to really do our part. And even if you don't have time to spend with community members, really all it boils down to is trust, respect, treating people with dignity and professionalism.
Do you think it's important to have this role? I know what you said about outwardly towards the community, but internally, and also being able to give that voice to the officers who may not feel like they have a voice.
Absolutely. It's just as important. We've got to make sure we're sufficient and intact here at home, just as much as we do, externally. So I'm happy to be that representative. I've had several officers, and it's not just officers, but even higher ranks, speak to me on an individual basis with, again, concerns and positive feedback, things that are going well. So Again, I don't take the position lightly.
Right, right. And it's also a different vantage point because you have the executive staff, you have the deputy chiefs, the assistant chief, and the chief. And it's been a while since they've actually been on the streets, boots to the ground kind of situation. And you literally just got plucked from that area. So you have a different view and a different voice. Do you think that lends to what your position is when you're discussing things to the executive staff?
Absolutely. I think it's impactful, and I think it's actually smart, you know, to have someone, an officer, if you will, be involved who's kind of still in tune with, you know, regular filing ranks. So, again, I'm happy to be a part of the solution, part of, you know, the team here, and look forward to the future. I've only been up here for 3 months, so there's a lot of work, you know, that has to be done.
A couple more things I wanted you to take back to the chief that we're seeing out here. Someone says plans to protect the people that live in Oakland, come to Oakland for shopping, grocery shopping, protecting business, especially in Chinatown and throughout the city. So I know that's also something that's important to the chief as well.
Absolutely. He's spoken on this several times before. You know, people who live in Oakland, residents of Oakland, ought to be able to feel safe in their own city, ought to be able to walk to the grocery store, you know, without having a shooting, you know, going on, or being confronted with some type of violent act. Kids being able to play outside, go to school safely. These are all things that the city and residents of Oakland deserve.
All right. And also we have a gentleman here talking about, he wants to make sure you bring awareness about a homicide of his son that happened last year. I don't see the comment anymore, but I did see that. I want to make sure that we did address that as well. But there's a lot for you to take back to the chief.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
And you will be at the Conversations Towards Solutions, and it's something that, as I've got to know you, is something that seems like very important to you as well, to have that Conversations Towards Solutions with community members.
Absolutely.
I know we did one in Deep East Oakland, and a lot of your former people when you were a CRO was very happy to see you there. They seemed very encouraged that you are at this position. Have you got a lot about that as well from people that you used to work with?
Honestly, you know, yes, and I'm honored, you know, by the support, not only from fellow officers, but again, just all kinds of members throughout the department. And I hope to do a good job in this position, but it's exciting. It's exciting to be able to make a difference on this type of platform.
But, sorry about that. The volume popped in there really quick. Yeah. So what was it like? I want to go back to, you know, recruitment kind of situation, because I do know that OPD is always constantly looking for the right people. Is it important to have a woman on the force? Is that representation needed? Do you think that's important? Is there something you want to say out to young women out there right now that may be thinking about stuff? Because you yourself, this isn't your first career, like you said. You came from a different background, so it's not something that you have to always say, you know, I want to be a police officer from the beginning. It's something that you can come at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a need for female representation, not just as police officers, but in all professions. I highly promote that. Yeah, for me, honestly, I have a little bit of a different experience getting into law enforcement than I think most. Again, this has been a second career for me. I've always had an interest in law enforcement, but for whatever reason, it just was never the right time. And part of that was, you know, my mother passed when I was in my early 20s, and so I kind of put everything off to attend to that, and life just, you know, happened. But I circled back to it eventually years later, because it was always something I wanted to do. And here I am. So certainly it's never too late. Go for your goals. Don't sell yourself short. And yes, apply for OPD. We are looking for good candidates.
And I want to make sure, I was saying earlier about the gentleman who was talking about his son. I want to make sure I say his son was Andre Robinson Jr. Okay. He passed in 2020 November 8th, 2020. So I just want to make sure I did say that to Mr. Robinson and let him know that we did see his question and his statement that I know you would like to take back with the chief as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else that you would like to say or add? I did not ask you about you, your position, going forward, conversations towards solutions, or just being a trust building officer?
You know, I think you covered a lot. Thank you for the interview. I look forward to continue to work with our community members, our officers, in making Oakland a better and safer community place.
Fantastic. Thank you, Officer Armstead. Next month, we'll be back again with Chief Armstrong. That'll be the second Wednesday of the month. That will actually be, looking at my calendar really quick, Wednesday, September 8th. And we will see you back then. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Be safe.